Hello and welcome to an Our Fake History digital short. Today we're going to explore the fake history behind the Olympic marathon. Roll the theme. Hey everyone, my name is Sebastian Major and I'm the host of Our Fake History. That's the podcast where we explore historical myths and try to determine what's fact, what's fiction, and what is such a good story that it simply must be told. Here on the digital shorts, I like to take a little something that we have been exploring on the longer audio podcasts and serve it in a more bite-sized video package. Recently, on the audio version of Our Fake History, we've been looking at the mythology that surrounds the Olympics. Now, arguably, the event that is most steeped in fake history is the one that was invented specifically for the first modern Olympics in Athens in 1896. That is, the marathon. The over 40-kilometer race was designed to, supposedly, reenact a historical event from Greece's ancient past. The story goes that in the year 490 BC, an army of Greeks led by the city of Athens made a stand against a massive Persian invasion force at the plains of Marathon, some 40 kilometers northeast of Athens. The Athenians and their allies were hugely outnumbered by the Persians, perhaps 3-1. Some less reliable sources even claim that the Persian army numbered 100,000 men, compared to the 10,000 fielded by the Greeks. While that's unlikely, all the sources agree that the Greeks were at a disadvantage. And yet, despite the long odds, the Athenians won the day. The Persians were pushed back, and the first attempted Persian invasion of Greece was stopped. Legend has it that as it became clear that the Greeks were going to win, a runner was sent from Marathon back to Athens to deliver the happy news. This runner covered that 40 kilometers at an impressive pace, but the exertion proved to be more than any mortal could handle. When he finally arrived in Athens, he collapsed in front of the city leaders, and with his last breath, he breathed the word Nikomen. We have won. And then the valiant messenger promptly died from exhaustion. The marathon had claimed its first happy victim. Now, that last word is somewhat contested. Others have translated it as, "Joy to you, we have won," with the runner repeating the word joy as he finally expires. It's not just the last words that are a little inconsistent between the sources. There's even some disagreement over the name of this famous first marathoner. The best-known tradition has it that the runner was named Phidippides, but another source calls him Philippides. And then a third source offers us two different names for the runner, calling him both Thersippus and Euclus. So, which one is it? Well, here's the thing about the story of the marathon run. The whole thing is probably fake history. The earliest source we have on the Battle of Marathon and the Persian Wars in general is our old buddy, Herodotus, father of history, father of lies. As we have mentioned many times before on this podcast, the writings of Herodotus are widely acknowledged as the first works of narrative history in what would later be understood as the Western tradition. His book on the Persian Wars set the template for centuries of history writing that would follow him. The other wonderful thing about Herodotus is that he was a storyteller that loved to spice up his historical accounts with rumors, legends, and wild tales that, while entertaining, probably were not true. Hence the moniker, father of history, father of lies. So Herodotus is the first source we have for the story of the runner Phidippides. But interestingly, in that version of things, Phidippides does not make a fatal run from Marathon to Athens. According to Herodotus, Phidippides was tasked with running all the way from Athens to Sparta to hopefully secure Spartan support for the upcoming battle with the Persians. We're told that Phidippides managed to cover this enormous 250-kilometer run in around a day and a half, or 36 hours. Not only did this not kill him, Herodotus makes a point of saying that these massive runs were fairly typical for a guy like Pheidippides. His job was literally to run between Greek cities delivering messages. We're told that Pheidippides arrived in Sparta healthy and with enough breath to deliver a fairly long and complex message about Athenian battle plans. The only bummer was that while the Spartans agreed to help, they claimed that their religious obligations insisted that they could not put an army in the field until the next full moon. They would love to help, but, we just can't make it in time because, the gods. So Herodotus gives us a great tale, but he says nothing about Pheidippides or any other runner going from Marathon to Athens to deliver a message of victory. The first time that story appears in writing is some 500 years later in the work of the Roman-era Greek historian Plutarch. In the book On the Glory of Athens, Plutarch tells the tale of a breathless runner delivering the news of victory from Marathon to the leaders of Athens. Except he calls this man both Thersippus and Eucles. The combined tale of the run to Sparta and then a subsequent run from Marathon to Athens finally appears a century after Plutarch in the writings of the Roman author Lucian. It's in Lucian that we get the story as we've come to know it, with the runner squeaking out his famous last words and dying at the feet of Athens' city fathers. So, that's a remarkable 600 years between the actual Battle of Marathon and the version of the Marathon story that has become the most beloved. The later a story appears in the sources, the less likely it is to be true. This is all to say that the story of the Marathon runner is a textbook example of a historical myth. It seems only fitting, then, that the first modern marathon was run as the signature event at the first modern Olympics. The revived Olympics were entirely based on a romantic and frankly inaccurate understanding of the ancient Greek past. The modern marathon was designed to reenact a run that almost certainly never actually took place. Once it was decided that the first modern Olympic Games would be hosted in Athens, organizers looked for as many opportunities as possible to evoke the city's classical past. Interestingly enough, it was a Frenchman named Michel Briel who first proposed the idea of a race from the plains of Marathon to the newly renovated Pan-Athenic Stadium in the Greek capital. And yet, there was something about that particular historical myth that seemed to resonate with the Greeks in 1896. Hosting this experimental new international athletic competition had been somewhat politically divisive in the country. The costs were considerable. Many Greeks also viewed the nascent International Olympic Committee and its president, the French Pierre de Coubertin, with suspicion. What right did these French fellows have to even use the name Olympics? Was this just another example of Western Europeans plundering Greece's heritage for their own amusement? Were the modern Olympics just the Elgin Marbles all over again? It took the influence of the Greek royal family to finally get the Athens Games the support it needed to happen at all. Sensing that a successful Games could be a positive thing for Greece's global standing, not to mention a propaganda victory for the still shaky Greek monarchy, the Crown Prince Constantine and Prince George became vocal supporters of the Athens Games. Despite the fact that the Games ran fairly smoothly, Greek skepticism did not entirely disappear until the marathon. Along with the discus throw, the marathon was the event most associated with Greece's ancient history. It had been a hit to Greek pride when an American, Thomas Burke, had triumphed in the discus. So many had pinned their hopes on the marathon. The race started on the plains of Marathon, wound down rudimentary dirt roads to Athens, and finally terminated in the Pan-Athenic Stadium. Sure, you can imagine how that place erupted when the first runner entered the stadium and the athlete was a Greek. Spiridon Louis, a 26-year-old former soldier who had sold mineral water on the streets of Athens with his father, was the undisputed winner of the world's first Olympic marathon. It's hard to overstate just how exciting this was for the Greek crowd. We're told that when he entered the Olympic Stadium, the overjoyed Greek princes, Constantine and George, both ran out of their seats and joined Spiridon for a victory lap of the stadium. Pandemonium became even more intense when it became clear that the second and third place runners were also Greek. Now, that third place runner would eventually be disqualified when it was discovered that he had rode part of the way in a horse-drawn cart. But in the moment, no one knew that. It simply looked like the Greeks had dominated the most Greek of races. One eyewitness glowed that, quote, "The whole scene can never be effaced from one's memory. Such was the scene, unsurpassed and unsurpassable. Who was present, who does not wish that he may once again be permitted to behold it," end quote. Another exclaimed, quote, "Egad, the excitement and the enthusiasm were simply indescribable," end quote. Writing years later, the Olympic founder, Pierre de Coubertin, wistfully recalled of Spiridon Louis's victory, quote, "At his entry into the stadium, it seemed that all of Greek antiquity entered with him. Cheers went up such as have never been heard before. This was one of the most extraordinary spectacles of which I have any memory," end quote. You can always rely on de Coubertin to bring it all back to the historical myth. As I've said before, the International Olympic Committee are suckers for historical symmetry. To have a Greek man win the first marathon in emulation of an ancient Greek runner, that was IOC catnip. Anyone trying to pedantically point out that the original marathon story was likely a myth would not have found many receptive ears in Athens in 1896. And so the marathon myth has been allowed to flourish. In a way, every time someone completes a marathon, they're participating in fake history. To find out more about the weird history of the Olympics, then please check out the audio version of the Our Fake History podcast. Find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel to get more wild stories from the past.